This podcast is brought to you by BiOptimizers MassZymes product. Watch the video at the end of the podcast for more details.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank J23 for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Jennie Bellinger. She's a certified professional coach, two-time international best-selling author. We share that in common. Former middle school science teacher turned internationally awarded direct sales leader. And she now helps entrepreneurs grow profitable businesses through confidence, clarity, and aligned action. Jennie is a longtime host of the award-winning Badass Direct Sales Mastery podcast and the host of What You Need to Grow, where she shares practical strategies for sales, leadership, mindset, and business growth. Through Badass Podcast Mastery, that's a bit of a tongue twister, she teaches podcast hosts how to monetize their shows without relying on corporate sponsors or massive audiences. Known for her bold, sassy, I can confirm that, sassy, and that'll come through in our interview, I'm sure. Known for her bold, sassy, and empowering style, Jennie combines mindset work with real-world business strategy to help entrepreneurs grow their income, impact, and confidence. Jennie, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this talk all day.
I'm glad.
We're gonna have a great time.
Yes, awesome. So, I mean, we've had a chance to talk, beforehand. A couple times I've been a guest on your show as well. Yeah. But for the listeners, feel free to go as far back as you want. What was that pivotal moment? Maybe it was like as a 5-year-old, or maybe it was in high school or whatever. As much as you want to go in detail, what brought you to where you're at today?
Ooh. I would say what brought me to where I am today was going back to childhood was, I grew up as an Air Force brat, meaning I moved every 2 to 4 years, literally my entire life. My dad joined the Air Force before I was born and retired the month that I turned 21 years old. So literally my entire formative, childhood was moving every so often. So I got very used to knowing that life changes and it's going to change, and it can change massively in 30 days or less, And so that capability of being able to adjust very quickly, to know how to pivot and be flexible, right? Like my kids are like, they want so much certainty, and I'm like, oh God, because they had the complete opposite childhood that I did.
Sure,
they are still in the same house that I was living in when they were born. They were not born in this house. I went to a hospital. But it's,
although more and more women now are trying to at least planning to have a home birth. No, we don't have to talk about that, but I'm just saying in general, and it doesn't always work out, and they end up going to the hospital anyway, but more and more women are trying to do that.
But that speaks to the flexibility, right? You've got to be flexible, and the number of people who get so attached to expecting something to be one way, and so when it doesn't happen that way, and not to say that that I can't be like that at times, but when you grow up knowing that in 2 years, a year, 6 months, 30 days, whatever, you are going to be in a totally different place in the world. And the only people you're going to know are your mom, your dad, and your siblings. And that's it. And so being able to pivot and do that has led me to where I am today. So in my intro, you hear it talks about my history as a science teacher, and then direct sales leader, and now a coach. That those flexible points, or that the changes came because of flexibility. I realized I didn't want to teach and be a mom at the same time, so I stepped back from raising other people's children 8 hours a day so that I could spend that time raising mine.
Right.
And then came the time where I was like, okay, my kids, they need to go be socialized. So we're going to go do daycare and stuff. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I can start a business. Cool. Started a business. Got really good at it. People wanted to know how I did it. And so then I became a coach to teach other people and help them achieve their goals, right? Not necessarily to teach, but teaching is a part of that sometimes. But
sure, it's probably part of your DNA, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, given the educational background for sure.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's what has led me to this now. It has been over time, that flexibility has been, and the ability to pivot and realize, okay, where I am now no longer works. Time to switch.
yeah.
And so yeah, that's how I got to where I am today.
So I just want to close the loop. I have a couple questions, and maybe the audience might be too. So just out of curiosity, what did your dad do in the Air Force?
He was a family physician. So most of his career he worked with, the members of the Air Force as well as their families, so spouses and kids. But there were a couple of years where he was a flight surgeon, meaning he worked exclusively with pilots
Got it.
for a couple of years. But he really liked the family side of it. So the next base we went to, he went back to family practice because that's what he realized he really loved. He was like, okay, got that experience. Not my favorite. Let's go this other direction.
And then two other questions. Would you say because of that experience, and like you said yourself, like the only people you know are your parents and your siblings, were you a very close family because of that experience of moving every 2 to 4 years?
Uh, yes and no. I mean, I've seen other families that are closer. So, comparison is the thief of joy. And yet, you know, that's how we kind of gauge things, right? But I would say, yeah, we're pretty close. I mean, like any family, we have our disagreements, we have whatever, but um, you know, growing up, every time we'd move, my siblings were my first playmates that I got to play with, because I didn't know anybody else yet. So until we went to the playground down the street together to meet other kids our age, I was playing Barbies with my sister again, and then we found friends our own age and then we go play with our friends and until the next time we moved and then playing Barbies together
So,
again.
so did
And
you find that was gonna be my next question. Did you find it relatively easy to like make friends fairly quickly, like once you moved to the new location?
I, you learn to, right? Either that or, and what I've learned over time is, interestingly enough, is I'm actually more introverted than I originally thought. Because I thought I was an extrovert because I thought that was outgoing, but I've learned differently now. But it the having, when you move, you know, you learn very quickly as a child to just walk up to somebody and be like, "Hi, I'm Jenny. Who are you?" Like, I like your shoes, or, can I swing with you or can I play on the carousel with you? Whatever it is. It's fairly simple and I think that still has held true today because I can walk into a networking event and walk out with two new friends because I find it easy to talk to people initially, and as long as
It's a good
they're,
skill to have.
yeah, as long as they're a good person and I enjoy the conversation, I don't feel the need to go to a networking event and talk to everybody there. I want to find two, three, four good connections with good human beings, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Awesome. So let's change. Thank you for sharing all that backstory
Sure.
and for satisfying my curiosity. Let's take a little shift here to kind of like what you're doing now with the podcast. Your own podcast, and then helping coaching other people who have their podcasts. So
Yeah.
probably the number one question, and obviously people are listening to this podcast, listen to podcasts because that's why they're here listening. And there'll be
Yeah.
people who are thinking of starting their own podcast. Maybe they have them before, maybe they didn't, or they know somebody, or they are running one. So why aren't more podcasts um, better at monetizing their show? What are some of the
Yeah.
pitfalls or challenges that people come across?
Well, I know this is going to be surprising to you as somebody who also works in the same arena. It starts with mindset and belief, right? And so, unfortunately, most podcasters believe that the best way and the fastest way or the only ways to monetize are to sell ads or sell sponsorships or build a massive audience and sell to their audience. And those aren't the only ways, but that's what is out there, right? And so, making YouTube ad revenue or, you know, getting paid seven
Very few
dollars
people can
per
be Joe Rogan, right?
right. Exactly. Or Mr. Beast or something, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, having that massive, massive audience. Because, yeah, if you've got 1 million people who are following your channel and 10% of them buy your stuff, that's a crap ton of money. Plus all the ad revenue that comes from having 1 million followers, right? Not all of us are going to achieve that. So, one of the things that kept me from launching my first podcast was actually that belief that I was going to have to sell ads. I'm like, I don't want to sell ads. I don't even know that I want ads on my show. Like, ugh, I don't want that, right? And I didn't want to be chasing down corporate sponsors trying to find companies that would spend money to support my show. And frankly, it hadn't occurred to me that I could interview people. My experience with podcasts was somebody got on a microphone and just talked to the listener, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For
That
15,
was like
20, 30 minutes.
podcasting like 1.0, where people just like literally read. I'll kind of sidebar for 1 second. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
Ben Greenfield at all.
I've heard the name.
Health influencer. He's been around. He's a fairly young guy. He's roughly the same age as me, but he's been doing this for a long, long time. Um, he would just read, like, he started just reading like scientific journal papers, like just into the microphone, and just like, and commenting on them. And now he's become this big like media empire type of thing. So like it just starts somewhere. Just start somewhere.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, I derailed you. Please
yeah,
continue.
no, you're fine. So but the point of that was, I was like, I don't know that I have enough to say to keep a podcast going for a really long time, you know, a- and so I just had all of these beliefs that held me back from doing it. But then I got introduced to somebody who said, well, what if, right? What if instead of selling ads and trying to find corporate sponsors, what if instead you leveraged your podcast to fill your coaching program? And I went, I'm sorry, how does that work? Right? Because again, I'm thinking from the audience, I would need listeners, I would need content. How am I going to do that? And he explained to me, no, just have conversations with people who might be coaching clients.
Right.
And I went, okay, teach me your ways, oh master. Right? Like, take me on that journey. And so, with my first podcast, when I launched it in June, actually, yesterday was the 7th anniversary of Badass Direct Sales Mastery
Oh, awesome.
launching.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, June of 2019, I launched my show and I already had money in the bank, 0 listeners. And when I had no idea how unusual that was when it happened. And so, over time, as I talked to podcasters who were like, I'm getting ready to shut down. I just can't afford to podcast anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you can't afford? Like, how are you not getting paid? Right? You've
All
been
right.
doing this longer than me. How are you not getting, it just blew my mind and I didn't understand it. And it took a while for me to see that this was unusual. And the statistics that are out there, show that 98% of podcasts are not monetized or are not monetized to the point that they even cover their own costs in many cases.
Yeah, you bring up a couple things. You probably know the stat better than me, but also like I think it's some high 90% podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes or something like that. I've
Hmm.
heard that before. And then the other part that you just kind of alluded to twice now is like the cost is like, I think some people think, and maybe erroneously, because some podcast marketing company or something got in their ear, was like, it costs a lot. Like, I mean, you can start. I mean, there's
Yeah.
quality and you can have better equipment and better production, sure. But like just
Right.
start, like you just need a camera and like
Yeah.
like my setup, we were talking a little bit before before we hit the record button. It's like I'm still using the same camera and mic for like, even before I had my podcast, like, and no one's ever complaining about my quality. And we do better editing now than we did in the beginning. But like, just start.
Yeah.
It's not that much. Any comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. Because one of the things that drives me crazy, because I'm a part of like 17 different like podcasting groups on Facebook, for example. And it drives me nuts when somebody's like, okay, I bought a microphone and a mixing board and a da 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 and a da 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 da. And then I'm also doing this and this and this and this. Okay, now how do I get started? I'm like, Oh my God, talk about putting the cart before the horse. you know, because it really is. I come from the keep podcasting as simple as possible. I even still to this day, I'm not investing in like I wouldn't even know what to do with a mixing board. And you don't need it.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't know either.
I'm like, I don't know why would anybody would need one, and maybe it's just because maybe they take phone calls and take callers on their show like a
No.
like a radio show from the 80s or 90s or something. I don't know. Maybe that's why they need it. I'm like, that's what Zoom's for, yo. I'm already paying for Zoom for my business, so why not just double dip and use it for my podcast?
Yeah, and depending what your business is, you might already have some sort of editing software already that you're using for
Right.
for uh like hard copy content that you can be used for video as well. So
Yeah,
and it's only
and
getting cheaper and cheaper.
right, exactly. And and if somebody has a Mac, well, editing software is free. It comes on your Mac. So there's options there that don't cost much at all. So and honestly, for the first 6 months of my show, I wasn't paying for anything past the microphone and my Zoom account because I leveraged relationships with a tech person who helped me get a website set up that I could go put it on. And I did a lot of the things myself. I bootstrapped that show from the get-go and had people who were willing to support me in a variety of ways. They had a photographer who took a free picture of me for my first cover art. And because he just wanted experience like doing a BDSM shot because Badass Direct Sales Mastery BDSM. He thought it was going to be hilarious that he'd have a
Mm,
corseted dom in his portfolio to be able to show off, right? So there's you don't have to pay like tons of money to start podcasting. It can be really, really inexpensive to start if you just keep it simple. And then that means whatever money does come in, it's much easier to uh, overcome what has been put into it, right? You don't have to make a ton of money to make the show pay for itself, you
sure,
know?
sure, yeah. So, we talk about like the mindset of starting the podcast, but you're also, coaching for people in direct sales. So let's take that same concept and like take it like a step back, just like the mindset and the beliefs that hold people back, even just from like in business or starting their business. Let's take it out a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I just had this conversation with my own coach literally right before this call. And the conversation, because I was working with her on saying, "Hey, I'm having this issue. Like, what can you help me figure this part out?" And she did. And then we got into discussing, well, part of what holds us back is so many of us feel like we need certainty. Like, I need to know that if I put this program out there, this podcast out there, this coaching, program, I need to know that I'm going to sell it, or I need to know that I'm going to get clients, or I need to know that I'm going to do whatever. And it's like, going back to my flexibility at the very beginning, not much is guaranteed for us in life except that none of us is getting out of here alive, right? So
And
certain
taxes.
and taxes, death and taxes, right? Truth. But the idea and what holds a lot of people back are their own things, right? And so for me, it was I felt like I needed certainty in knowing exactly what I was going to be having a conversation with this particular gal, right? And it's like, no, you don't need certainty, right? What you need to do is have just a basic framework going into it because you don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what the conversation is going to be. So I think for a lot of people, and this goes back to the why don't podcasters make money? It's because we just have our own beliefs, thoughts, mindsets,
Sure. Yeah.
that stand between us and that thing we want. So you've got to be willing to be comfortable being uncomfortable. to get what you want on the other side.
100% can agree more. Um, let's switch a little bit vein here, or
Sure.
of train of thought here, but I'd love to know, because someone's looking from the outside in, like, oh, very impressive bio and top podcasts, and oh, she's so sassy, all this stuff. But like, we all go through the struggle, right? There's no reward without the struggle. So what's maybe
Yeah.
like what's one of your biggest lessons that you learned from like a real challenge or a real struggle?
Ooh. Um, oh, okay. What's coming up for me with this is not everyone's going to love you. Not everyone is for you, because before I got into coaching, uh, whether or not someone liked me didn't matter if they were going to buy jewelry, because that's the direct sales company I was with. It was a jewelry company. It didn't matter if they liked me or not. They just had to like me enough to want to see the sparkly things, and then did they like those enough to buy them? But when you are a coach, people are buying the outcome if they believe you can provide the outcome, which means they're also buying you.
Right.
Right. And so I think initially it was hard for me to not hear no, because I was used to hearing no, because when you're in direct sales, you hear a lot of no. But it felt more personal as a coach, And so,
Like,
and
they're saying no to you personally, not the
yeah,
program, the offer, the whatever you were packaging up. It
yeah,
was like a direct no to you.
yeah. And so one of the things that I think that played into, because Badass Direct Sales Mastery is BDSM, having that Dom persona was me instead of saying, well, it was me making the shift from I want everyone to be for me to instead being like, no, 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 no. I'm now intentionally going to repel the people who are not for me. Like, if they can't handle the direct sales Dom, if they can't handle the branding of a direct sales Dom, that's like just one step too far over the line for them. Um, that was perfect for me because I needed people who got the joke because I've never actually whipped anybody in my business. So, like, I've never actually held a whip, to be honest. I've never done any of that. The joke is I whip businesses into shape, right? But it took me a
I'm,
while
I'm seeing a
to
whole new like marketing campaign for you now. But, and I will we'll put that aside for a second.
yeah, right. Well, but and so that's what came from that. So the biggest lesson was getting past because going from making so many friends as a kid
Right.
to now, oh my God, they didn't buy my stuff. They didn't buy my coaching program, which means they didn't buy me, and these aren't necessarily conscious thoughts that are happening,
No,
but there's
it's all
still
unconscious. It's all that something from
yeah, yeah, yeah.
learned behaviors.
Right. And so I think the Dom was a response to going, okay, fine. Let's push away the people who are not for me. And from the get go, because if you can't even listen to a podcast that nobody knows you're listening to, so there's no judgment from anybody else. So that really is coming down to, are we aligned? And if they can't listen to a show that has that as a running joke, because if you were to go listen to Badass Direct Sales Mastery, there's 368 episodes. I think there's maybe 10 episodes I can think of off the top of my head where sex, BDSM, or kink was ever really discussed. That's a really small number,
Yeah.
right? Because the running joke is just, for me as the host, is can we put a much more interesting conversation in front of people when it comes to sales, when it comes to growing a team, when it comes to leadership conversations, than just your typical, because if you want a vanilla conversation around any of those things, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of podcasts that will have those conversations. I'm willing to have the slightly more fun one with a twinkle in my eye and tongue in cheek.
No, you got it's your podcast. You got to do what resonates
Right.
for you, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, as we slowly come to our last couple of questions, we kind of come slowly to a wrap here. I did want to come back just to the podcast directly because you do have a
Yeah.
gift for the listeners, and I'd
Yeah.
love for you to just and of course everyone will have all of Jennie's links in the show notes and where you can find her, and links to her podcast and all that sort of, and a link for this gift. But Jennie, what is the gift for the listeners?
Yeah. So to help overcome like podcasters knowing what's possible, because I only talked about the one of the ways that I monetize earlier here in this episode, is I've actually got 8 different ways that I monetize my 2 shows. And so what I've done is I've put together a quick little training. It's 25 minutes to go over. Here's the 8 ways that I monetize my 2 shows. That includes that guest to client strategy, but 7 others that help bring in some sort of revenue or income into my business or into my world, or to the podcast. So it's this simple little webinar, just speaks directly to one person. And it doesn't matter if somebody has a podcast yet or not, because when they click on the link, they're gonna have a little thing pop up that just says, quick question, do you have a podcast? Yes or no. If they click yes, it shows them the webinar and it talks to them, to podcasters with experience, right? If they click no, that they don't have a podcast yet, but they want one, I give an overview with more languaging geared towards people who haven't gotten there yet. So I'm not using podcasting jargon or anything like that. It's a way for someone who's maybe thinking about coming into the podcasting space and they want to make sure that if they're anything like me and they want to monetize as quickly as possible, they can see what's possible instead of going into it thinking, God, I hope I can get Mr. Beast numbers in like a year.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you went that route to kind of have those 2 audiences and them self-selecting in. It just popped in my mind. I don't know, an hour before we jumped on the call here, a colleague had already asked me a few weeks ago about if they're thinking about starting a podcast, if I'd be a guest, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I responded, and they responded back. So now the top of mind was like, oh, I need to send them this link themselves. So I'll send this to
Yeah,
them so they can
thank
download it
you.
as well. So love that. So yeah, again, everyone, we will have it in the show notes. So whether you're a podcaster or thinking of maybe you're even just curious, click the no side and maybe just learn some things behind the scenes that would maybe appreciate the podcast you do listen to a little bit better. So Jennie, as my background is kind of in the health. This is not a health focused podcast, but I do like to ask my guests, what is sort of a health non-negotiable. Maybe it's your morning routine, maybe it's something else, but what's a health non-negotiable for you?
Ooh, non-negotiable health thing for me. It, I don't know. Right? Because um eh, I'm trying to think what there is that I'm like hard-nosed on when it comes to my health. I don't know. I don't know that there is a hard-nosed non-negotiable for me. I'm
What's
I'm
an
I
80% of the time?
that's a great question. Yeah, because I wish I could say I was that hard-nosed and really good and consistent about things. But one of the things that came to mind is actually like getting better at hydration, and being very conscious of how much I'm taking in, because only recently have I fully understood like how powerful water is. It's not just about thirst. I actually injured my leg 2 weeks ago. Um, severely strained my calf muscle. And when I was talking to I just started with a personal trainer. Like I was supposed to start with a personal trainer. I injured my leg on Saturday. I was supposed to start on Wednesday. And so I showed up to the conversation going, so I can't walk. I don't know how we're gonna do this thing. And the conversation we ended up having was around hydration and how important it is. And that's probably why I hurt myself, was because I wasn't doing anything like really hard. I just wasn't hydrated well enough. So the muscle just gave out and strained itself, So that for me in the past, I'd say 6 months has been becoming more and more obvious. It keeps coming up as a thing. So I would say hydration is probably
Yeah,
my big thing
that's
right now.
that's a great answer, Jenny. I want to share some, and to listeners too. I literally just learned this yesterday.
Ooh,
There's a I won't mention the name because they're not a sponsor, but there's a company that I use with my clients for specific sort of testing, and we were having a conversation. My client, myself, and one of the researchers, doctors at this company for the consult. Anyway, long story short, my client is already someone who drinks well above what the recommended dosage of water is because she knows she needs more water. But when we got her
yeah,
test results, specifically her some of her metabolite markers, it clearly showed like, oh, you're dehydrated. You need to drink more. She's like, I already drink so much water. It's like some people just need to drink a lot more, and you have to like kind of space it out, of course, but really like, and
yeah,
they kind of said, like some people just need to drink like 3 liters a day. Like it's just how it is. So,
right.
so I love that you brought that up, and it's kind of timely that and I was like, say, if you're feeling a little bit parched, you're already dehydrated. You're already
Yeah,
dehydrated if you're feeling a little bit thirsty. So
yeah, for
awesome,
sure.
awesome. So last question. Let's leave the audience with, what's Jenny's like golden nugget or last takeaway for the audience.
Mm. It, I think it comes down to, especially not knowing exactly who your audience is, though, that let's go back to, let's make this a full circle moment of flexibility, right? Flexibility is um, realizing that ultimately the reason I'm able to be flexible is because I know that I can handle whatever comes my way, right? And as it doesn't mean I don't feel disappointed if something that I hoped would happen didn't happen. I still feel the disappointment, but I also know that I can handle whatever it is that happened instead. Right. And I think the reason that so many people maybe have difficulty when things don't come out their way is because they're not sure that they can handle it. But honestly, you've survived 100% of all of your bad days. You're here listening to this now. So you obviously can handle it because you're here.
Yeah,
May not have
that's
been
great.
fun.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, 100%. I love that answer, flexibility. And you said earlier, be comfortable being uncomfortable because that's
Yeah,
life. That's life.
for
Yeah,
sure.
awesome. So as we head out, folks, also don't forget to check out today's show sponsor as well. Check them out, and those always rotate support to those companies who are helping support me in bringing this to you. And yeah, Jenny, I want to really thank you again for being a guest on the Deepak Saini Show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure was all mine. It was a pleasure being on your show as well. So we'll definitely have all of Jenny's links and the links to her podcasts in the show notes. And I'm going to throw it to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. And thanks everyone for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. And remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. Until next time. Today's podcast sponsor is BiOptimizers, particularly their MassZymes product here. I use this every time I have a protein-rich meal or a dairy-rich meal. It's a digestive enzyme product that helps break down proteins from meat, and eggs, etc. You're having that big steak, and also dairy products. You're having the cheese, etc. So I'm very sensitive to these dairy products, particularly some of the enzymes in that. So it helps me break it down so my body can actually use it, and it helps break down that yummy steak or ribs or chicken or whatever I'm having, so I can actually use the amino acids from that and help digest that food. So BiOptimizers has like 80 products in their line. I'm just talking about one here, MassZymes. There's Gluten Guardian, which I've talked about before if you're sensitive to gluten. They have nootropics, and they also have my favorite brand of magnesium, Magnesium Breakthrough, that has all 7 forms of magnesium. And I'll talk about that another time. But MassZymes If you eat meat and you want to get more from your meat, make sure you're digesting it properly and actually get the benefits you want, get those amino acids, then you definitely want to check out MassZymes.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company